Hello, and welcome to another edition of Hooks and Ladders, where we talk about songwriting. My name is Blair Packham.
My name is Allister Bradley, and we are here today with a special guest. Gord Deppe is back in the Hooks and Ladders studio with us. I call it a studio, even though it's all virtual. Welcome back, Gord.
Good to be back. Missed you guys.
Always good to chat. It's been so long.
Yeah.
Let's just dive right in. I had this curious question on my head because when I think back to the Spoon songs that I loved listening to, I mean, man, I wore out my cassettes in the 80s in my Walkman. It occurred to me that there was a romanticism to your lyrics. And so now, as a songwriter, I feel like I want to ask you, how much of what makes it into your song would you say is fact versus fiction?
Jeez. I don't think, in my case, I didn't know until like 30 years later. I never sit down and say, well, this just happened to me in my life and I'm going to write about it. But I figure out later that even if the lyric is like, uses the word you or us or I, whatever, I think a bit of my life that I've gone through at that time oozes into the song, but it's not like I'm sitting down to do it. I'm just writing in general terms, right? But a good example is Romantic Traffic, is that I think it was more when I saw the video, like 30 something years later, I remembered, wait a second, that's when Sandy and I broke up. We used to be a couple back in the 80s. And not just the song, but the video is like a window into our lives at the time, you know? So obviously I was writing about that thing, but I wasn't sitting down to do it. So that's great. That's kind of your subconscious, whatever is taking over and bringing out what you're sort of feeling and thinking. So it's not conscious, no. You know, I think that would be kind of, to me, sappy. But and 30 years later or 40 years later, I'm kind of glad it did. Because each song is like a time capsule. I think I mentioned that before, not only of the lyrics, but where you recorded it, you know, what was happening that day. And sometimes when you listen to a song, beyond the lyric, all those things come out. It's like, wow, you know, I remember that snowy day in New York City when we went to the studio, and it's got this whole thing around it that's amazing. We're so lucky to have, right? So no, it's not conscious at all. Never. That's
very interesting, because I found, in my teaching, I teach at Seneca College here in Toronto. And so I am dealing with a lot of students who are 18, 19, 20 years old. And most of them consciously write autobiographically and seem to feel, although I haven't, quizzed all of them on this, but they seem to feel that that's the valid way of songwriting. And I don't think there is the valid way of songwriting. I think there's many valid ways of writing songs. Yeah. But they seem to feel that that's the most meaningful. And so I wonder where your impetus to consciously not do that comes from.
Yeah.
Any idea?
No, because I like I said, I think I mentioned before, I don't like songs when it's like has to be thought out or methodical. Like I have to work on it, and I love the sort of the free form writing. You know, they call it. They just have a term for it in the old days where people just sort of write, not to look and think. You know, and almost write like that. And lyrics to me come last for that reason. I'll have a song, melody, guitar parts, and just start singing jumbly words. Almost something to just sort of stumble out from some other place. And when that happens, that's incredible. And I've done record songs where I have a quick lyric and get it down, and it's like, oh, this is rubbish. And I count on that magic stuff to bubble out somehow. And there's no way to teach them that. I don't think. It's almost like, in the 60s when they wrote on, they were high and we're in a different plane. But I do this without drugs. It's just me. And I really have a way of doing this. And I have to get in a certain state of mind. And then you get these weird combinations of words that you would not normally have used. And I think those are magical. It's like you're tapping into something which you can't really control. If there was a way to control it, maybe I'd have more hit records. I don't know, but it's totally ergonomic and no system. I couldn't, that's why I find it hard to write for other people and stuff. It sort of comes from the moment. And I remember doing shows in the early days of the Spoons where we'd have a song sort of half done. And I would have some lyrics, but not a lot. But back then, you could just make up, listening to the Talking Heads and all these kind of people, you could sort of get away with going, just sort of singing random stuff. And out
Sounds.
Of that would come words. I'm sure we were playing at the Edge or something, and a car tooted its horn outside, went, I'm in traffic, and like, oh, yeah, there's a subject to write about. So
Yeah.
I'm really not systematic, and people have noticed that about me. That I do this sort of weird loosey-goosey way of doing things. And my God, I could never be a staff writer for somebody or a label or writer, because they would just rip their hair out. You sit around waiting. But when that happens, sometimes it can happen in a day where I'll rewrite all the lyrics or music for an album, because all of a sudden those floodgates are open. And when they do, you don't stop for anything. You don't stop for lunch or pee breaks or anything. You just let it come.
Yeah, yeah. You got to go with it. Yeah, one of the things I talk to my students about is having, ideally, you can't always do this, I don't think, but having a great opening line. A line that kind of invites the listener in, makes the listener go, what? What's going on here? I want to hear this. Who the heck would ever come up with an opening line for a pop song, Architects of the World?
I know.
Just those words.
It's so on rock and roll, and somebody, I've been asked before, and then I realized, I wrote a book about my life, and then you realize things, why you did them sometimes 30 years later. And that, I thought I was going to be an architect when I was a kid. I actually was thinking, so maybe that's hung with me, and reading stuff like Ayn Rand and stuff, like very petty stuff like Neil Peart was and stuff. It's just, I don't know, it just sort of like architects didn't mean architects. I mean, like all the people that sort of tell us what to do and build things up for us. And it was such an 80s word. In 80s, we used really angular utilitarian things like spoons. That's not, what does that mean? But it's sort of very, like objects and sort of very, what do you call it? It's sort of out of the Bauhaus and what they call it, craft work, and not German background. That's one of my faults too. It's like it's sort of influenced by that sort of mentality. And I found out it's not a bad thing. I used to be embarrassed about all that stuff. I realized there's a whole, they called it krautrock or something, a scene in the 70s that was, people like Bowie went and learned from. It was a whole aesthetic of that was not very rock and roll at the beginning, but had its own cool thing. And I really sort of gravitate to that. See, Architects of the World, you're right. It's not very romantic, but people still thought somehow that it was a love song, like somehow in there is love,
Well,
So,
the beautiful thing about it, it's not just architects, in your offices or building buildings. It's architects of the world. So there's an expansiveness to it, which to me it's a hallmark, not a hallmark. It indicates, it's a signpost that indicates this song is, even if it is a love song, which, let's face it, it probably is, because most pop songs are love songs. It's going to be a different kind of pop song, and it's going to be one that encompasses a bigger vision. And for me, that was what it was instantly when I first heard it. The very first time I heard it, way back when.
Well, look at the Ars Symphonies record, our first big record. Oh my God! Like for a bunch of kids who's out of high school, pretty well. I should say, for me, university, but Sandy. It wasn't an album of like love songs and partying, drinking stuff. Like Ars Symphonies was the wall. It's about, the individual in the crowd and breaking free and being told what to do all your life, and sort of, and then Nova Heart, with Architect. It was very sort of, when we went to write a song, if it became too normal lyrically, I said, nope, I'm going to be more adventurous, like you say, and take a different angle on it. Even a song when we got commercial, like Romantic Traffic, which is about as commercial as we got. I didn't just say, hey, it's a song about meeting people and relationships, but I put it in the context of traffic and cars, where they're bumping into each other, accidents, passing each other, cool little analogies and stuff. So I was try really hard to be, interesting in a different way, not just be obvious, And it's funny, one of the biggest contributions, we were lucky to work with Nile Rodgers. We did 2 records with him, was when we got to the chorus, because that I was actually writing lyrics there. And he said, what are you doing? That's the hook, that hook right there. And luckily he stopped me. Imagine what a mess of words it would have been if I put something there.
I don't know why anybody, whatever.
Really.
It would just be weird. Yeah, it wouldn't be good. And by the way, if you use those lyrics in the future, you'll talk to me, talk to my lawyer.
That's right.
It's funny. Andy Kim, writer of Sugar Sugar, had a very similar experience with Jeff Barry, his co-writer, when they're writing Sugar Sugar, sugar, dun, 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 and Andy started writing words for the dun, 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 dun thing, and Jeff Barry was like, no, those will not be words, and so they ended up being a marimba, which is not a very rock and roll instrument, but worked pretty well.
Yeah, it's kind
So
it's
yeah,
that's sometimes fun to do, dividing things up. That which is a keyword melody, which is a vocal like even Nova Heart, the da da da. Imagine if I sang something there, that would have been ridiculous. But it's fun dividing those things up sometimes, and that was part of the '80s, I think, too, trying to be as clever and different, as you could
yeah,
be.
yeah.
And we always had
Now,
three. Sorry.
oh, that's okay. I was just going to say, but getting back to what the autobiographical versus
Mhm.
non-autobiographical, or romantic, versus more utilitarian. It seems to me you're striking a beautiful balance with the Spoons material, because it's emotionally truthful.
Oh, sorry. My little battery sank.
Because that's okay. Because it's emotionally truthful, um, without it having to adhere to a set of facts.
Yeah. But
Does
it's
that make
totally
sense?
pure. Absolutely, it's me to the core, even though it's kind of cryptic sometimes, because I'm not trying to get an opinion across. Good examples. The last record we did, New Day, New World, which came out in 2019, before the lockdown. What a title, New Day, New World. And
No kidding.
but there was something brewing. And now when you look at that, you say, "Oh my God, did I know something?" Or like, it's
Yeah.
because some of those lyrics that were written before, or just it came out before it happened. It was like, "Oh my God, where did this come from?" It's like, so
Wow. Yeah.
something, so there's good proof right there. Imagine if I tried to write obvious songs about lockdown and COVID, it'd be horrible, right? But when it
Yeah.
comes through truthfully and kind of seeps in sideways, it's like, then it gets creepy in a way.
I think
I think it's very fortunate.
what I'm feeling here is there's a theme of confidence. You've probably always been a very confident writer, and it hasn't been a question of courage for you to say, "Oh, I want to veer away from the truth," or I want to expose my truth. Would you say you've always had a confidence
I think
in
so.
your writing?
I
Yeah.
even before writing music, I was when I wrote a book too. And people always said, "You didn't write that." Yes, I did. I admit I'm a good writer. I'm not talking about music, but just writing. I like to write and stuff. So when those things come out naturally, that's what I count on now. I will not force anything, but that's hard for somebody starting out. You got to force it a bit, right? But when you find that little spigot, that tap that you can turn on, and those things just sort of fall out automatically, then that's what you have to strive for, I think. And I remember somebody explaining even like Beatles lyrics. They said if you actually read them, they're not brilliant sometimes, but when you hear them, these sort of word combinations, you go, "Oh my God, that's brilliant!" It's just in the playing, they sound great, and that's more important than writing a poem and then sending it to music. I think it just
Yes.
doesn't always work. It's like there's a weird
Yeah.
combination that happens, like symmetry between the melody and the performance and the lyrics. Because if you try to do each one separately and sort of glue them together, it's tough. I think I can't do that. I start strumming
Yeah.
randomly, like it's coming, and I start singing randomly, and I kind of just, and
Yes.
I get this
It
funny little
evolves.
song.
Well,
Yeah.
the beautiful thing that I take away from all of this is your ability to get into that zone, where it's just, as you say, the spigot
Yeah.
is turned and you're able to flow. And
Yeah.
that's a really beautiful thing, and one that I envy, because I certainly I'm not there all the time myself.
Well,
Um,
don't be, because I've gone through, what do you call it, writer's block, where I think that's it. I'm not doing anything else. Like months will go by, a year maybe will go by, but I think nothing of any worth is coming out of me. And I think that's it. I guess I'm done. And all of a sudden something
yeah.
happens, and there it is. It's like, oh my God, how lucky am I that happened again? And maybe rubbish to everybody
That's
else, but I'm my own, quality control. I'm pretty critical of stuff. And when that happens, it's like, I didn't think we were going to make another record, than we did in 2011. I thought it was really good. And then 2019, I never thought that would happen, but all of a sudden there were the songs, so, yeah.
That's great. Yeah, it's so
So
great.
if I've
And then
been
there's a
writing
new
every
record.
year, yeah.
Oh,
Sorry.
I'm just sorry. I was just going to say, then there's the new record celebrating your songs from the past, with all those excellent
Yeah.
artists covering your songs, which is
Yeah.
fantastic. Echoes is what
Echoes,
it's called.
yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
featuring a whole raft of people including our friend Lawrence Gowan, as you've mentioned. So yeah,
Yeah, and
beautiful.
God's Tiger and Strange Advance, and the list goes on.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Well, once again, we got to wrap it up. But I think Allister and I could talk to you for days. So this is beautiful.
Let's do it again anytime. I
yeah.
love it.
Okay. Love to hear your
You're
insights
making
about
sense
songwriting.
of my life. just talking now. It's all making sense.
Well, that is why I write songs, and it sounds like you do too. You write songs to make sense of your life, even if it takes 30 years to look back and realize, oh, that's what I meant.
Absolutely,
it's helpful. As personal expression. So, anyway, thank you so much, Gord.
Thank
Gord
you.
Deppe from the Spoons. Glad to have you here and to talk with you. And stay safe.
My pleasure. Thank you. You too.